What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Monday, April 12th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 9-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Kobe White from the Chicago Bulls playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have the 13th worst defense overall and they're middle of the pack defending opposing point guards. Kobe White has averaged 26.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 20, 21, and 16 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 23, 28, and 26 minutes. So he's been underperforming his season average, both in fantasy points per game and in minutes per game, but he's projected at 24.9 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.3 times value. He's $4,700 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. He scored 9 and 35 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Grizzlies, so plenty of risk with this pick here, but I think in a back-to-back, I think he's going to get plenty of minutes here to hit value. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 229 points scored in this game, so we got a high-scoring game. So I like Kobe White here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Okay, another point guard that I like is John Wall from the Houston Rockets playing the Phoenix Suns, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards. But John Wall has averaged 37.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He scored 43 and 59 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 36 and 34 minutes. He's projected at 39.3 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.5 times value, because he's $8,700 FanDuel salary, but he's $700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 228 points scored in this game, so I like John Wall here versus the Phoenix Suns. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Donovan Mitchell has averaged 40.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He scored 58, 49, and 54 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 32, and 40 minutes. He had a 47% usage rate last game, and his usage rate's been over 40% for the past 3 games. He's projected at 40.2 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he's going to score closer to 50 fantasy points and get you over 5 times value. He's $9,000 FanDuel salary and $200 more on DraftKings. And I like this pick because he scored 58, 42, and 47 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Wizards. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 235 points scored in this game. Sorry guys, my voice is kind of going. I've been sick the past couple of days, so I'm struggling through this. But I got to do these every day, rain or shine, so here I am. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 235 points scored in this game. So a super high scoring game, a fantastic matchup, and great player versus team history. So I like Donovan Mitchell here versus the Washington Wizards.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, another shooting guard that I like is DeMar DeRozan from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Orlando Magic, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. DeMar DeRozan has averaged 38.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate. He scored 49, 46, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 34, 36, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 38 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.8 times value. He's 7,900 FanDuel salary and 100 less on DraftKings. He scored 36, 32, 36, and 43 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Magic, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 220.5 points scored in this game, so I like DeMar DeRozan here versus the Orlando Magic. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Michael Porter Jr. from the Denver Nuggets playing the Golden State Warriors, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Michael Porter Jr. has averaged 31.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. But he scored 41, 41, and 37 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 40, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 38 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's 7,600 FanDuel salary, and he's 600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 229.5 points scored in this game. So you got a good matchup in a high-scoring game. So I like Michael Porter Jr., especially on DraftKings, here versus the Golden State Warriors. Okay, another small forward that I like is Keldon Johnson from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Orlando Magic, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Keldon Johnson has averaged 25.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 15, 22, and 21 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 28, 26, and 26 minutes. So he's been underperforming his season average, but he's projected at 25 fantasy points here tonight. That's just about 5 times value. He's 5,100 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 220.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup, so I like Keldon Johnson here versus the Orlando Magic. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Harrison Barnes from the Sacramento Kings playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Harrison Barnes has averaged 30.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 20, 21, and 42 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 37, 39, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 30.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's 6,200 FanDuel salary, and he's 100 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 231 points scored in this game. And I like this pick because he scored 43, 13, 44, 35, and 38 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Pelicans. So throw that 13 out of there, and he's doing pretty well, averaging 5.5 times value or more versus the Pelicans. So I like Harrison Barnes here versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Royce O'Neal from the Utah Jazz playing the Washington Wizards, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the sixth most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Royce O'Neal has averaged 21.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 10% usage rate. He scored 32, 19, and 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 31, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 20.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's $4,200 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. He scored 22, 24, and 18 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Wizards. And I like this pick because Vegas thinks there's going to be 235 points scored in this game, so plenty of fantasy points to go around. It's a great matchup. He's playing a ton of minutes. He can score 30 plus fantasy points and crush value here. So I like Royce O'Neal here versus the Washington Wizards.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the position optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new player trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the Washington Wizards, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing centers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 41 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 28, 48, and 47 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 32, and 36 minutes. He's projected at 41.1 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 4.8 times value because he's $8,500 FanDuel salary, but he's $600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. And he scored 38, 38, 47, 47, and 43 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Wizards. So I love that player versus team history. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 235 points scored in this game, and it's a fantastic matchup. So I love Rudy Gobert, especially on DraftKings here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, another center that I like is Richaun Holmes from the Sacramento Kings playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Richaun Holmes has averaged 33.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 43, 37, and 33 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 25, and 34 minutes. He had a 24% usage rate last game, so that's way over his season average, and he's projected at 35 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $6,900 FanDuel salary and $400 more on DraftKings. And I like this pick because he scored 48, 35, 23, and 35 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Pelicans. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 231 points scored in this game, so another high-scoring game. So I like Richaun Holmes here versus the New Orleans Pelicans.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.